Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about meditative and martial arts practices as I am joined by author and founder of the Northwest Fighting Arts, straight out of Portland, Jeff Patterson. Jeff focuses on the yielding concept, and he has 36 years of experience teaching and practicing the meditative and martial arts. So we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's up to and his passion, meditation and martial arts. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been teaching and running an academy here in Portland, Oregon now for a little over 30 years. Here at the academy, we do a variety of different martial arts, from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Western boxing, Eskrima, and then we have our meditative program, which is geared around Tai Chi, Qigong, sitting meditation, and breath work. I was kind of introduced to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way, in that I was very much into Western boxing as a youth, and at about 19 years old, I was training at a boxing gym not too far here from my academy. And one of the coaches there was somebody who was very inspirational to me and a very reputable, well-known coach. And, I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. However, he was busy and had a full card of fighters he was working with. And so it took me a while to kind of get his attention. And so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work hard and let him know that it would be not a waste of his time to spend some time with me. And after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started showing me a few things. And it was only 2 or 3 weeks from me getting to spend a little bit of time with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And I had a lot of respect for him. I started following that path, and not only has it continued to change my life for the better through the years, I've been very fortunate to have over 26,000 students come through my academy here in Portland, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And this is one of the things that's made me so passionate about writing my last couple books and creating my online programs, my teacher training programs, because I just want to get this message out to as many people as I can.
So you focus on the yielding concept. So explain to listeners what that is and why you focus so much on that.
Well, yielding is just one of the many concepts that I find really fascinating, and that's what motivated me to write my last book. However, in the meditative arts, there's many different philosophical concepts that we follow. But briefly, I'll kind of touch on what I mean by when I say yielding. And so in my book, The Yielding Warrior, I've broken down yielding into 3 categories: physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, in athletics, it's easy to see how this is beneficial, because it doesn't matter what sport you play, basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, you're going to come up against other athletes who are bigger and stronger than you. And if you don't know how to yield to that force and only try to butt heads with them, you're going to often lose that battle. And so by yielding, it allows you to get the upper hand on somebody who's bigger and stronger than you. And now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, from day one of integrating meditation practices into your life, you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself. And this is kind of where all the magic starts to happen, because once you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. If I pick up on that from that first sign of imbalance, it's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so, learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of anyway. And two, it allows us to be strategic so we can guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is beneficial in our relationships, in business, in sales, and negotiations. And there's so many applications of how we can use this idea of mental yielding. Then we have what we call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with your own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our heightened awareness through integrating meditation into our life, we're often able to sit back and be more present and be out of those emotional states. So when these things happen, we're able to respond from a balanced, centered position. So we can oftentimes save ourselves a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for well over 30 years. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I use yielding all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events in the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And that's what the meditative arts helps us do with recognizing these energetic imbalances and things that happen not only inside ourselves, but inside of other people. And I truly believe without a meditation practice in your life, you'll never see these things with this amount of detail.
I know even if we were in a conversation to where I wasn't paying attention and we disagreed, I definitely wouldn't slap you upside the head because you could kick my butt. Let's talk about, and I know I'm going to get this word wrong, Qigong and meditation. How can you find optimal performance with that?
So Qigong is a very deep practice and it's one of the meditative arts. And when I talk about meditative arts, I'm including anything that's a movement practice, a sitting practice, a standing meditation, energetic circulations in the body, philosophical approaches to meditation. I kind of categorize, everything in that meditative art platform. Now, Qigong has a number of different directions. There is kind of the athletic or physical development side of the practice that a lot of professional athletes and amateur athletes will use to help improve their performance. There's the therapeutic side of the practice, which is good for helping us stay healthy and improving our longevity. There's the medical side of the practice, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And as you take on your journey in the meditative arts, you could follow any one of those paths. And Qigong is a very great practice because it has things that you could do that will help you in any one of those directions you choose to follow.
So talk about the three types of meditation. Tell us what they are and how they benefit.
Well, there's many different types of meditation. I think you're referring to the different modalities that we can practice these meditations, and I refer to them as ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. Now, ritual practices are when we set time aside every day and we do, say, a sitting meditation or a Tai Chi form or a Qigong set or something that where we can shut off the audios, not turn the computer screens on, not have our cell phone tethered to our hand, and something where we can just focus internally. Because a lot of times people refer to the meditative arts as the internal arts. And they're called the internal arts for a reason, in that they're meant to be a time where we turn our focus inward and not be listening to music or watching videos. I know a lot of people these days now are looking to YouTube as a source of education for the practice. And while I don't think that's a bad thing, there's a lot to be learned there, but it's not meant to be a substitute for that ritual time. That ritual time, we want to shut those videos off, shut the audios off, and just turn that focus inward. Then there's active practices. And active practices are a great tool and supplement to your practice in that they can be done in as little as 60 seconds or 2 minutes. They can be done when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And the idea is to integrate these things into our day so we're keeping that certain level of being present and aware in everything we do. Because even if you're very disciplined and you're meditating every day, it doesn't make a lot of sense to meditate for 20 or 30 minutes and feel very good and relaxed. And then the whole rest of the day, you're stressed out and anxious. So these active practices help us kind of come back to that centered state so we can find that balance. And then lastly, there's philosophical practices. And philosophical practices are a very deep path to follow. There's lots of different directions and things that we can do with this. And these can be integrated both into our ritual practices as well as our active practices. And as you start to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts, if you have these three methods of training, you can now start to really touch and get to deep levels of a meditative practice and whatever path you decide to follow.
Well, talk about the five regulations, describe those, and also describe how they can contribute to you leading a healthier life.
I really like the idea of the five regulations because, in a sense, they're simple, but they're also very complex. And if you focus on these five foundational principles, they can give you a depth and a wealth of benefits to come from your meditation practice. And it doesn't matter what meditation practice you are currently doing, whether it's a sitting practice, standing meditation, a movement practice, every single practice out there has these fundamental basics at their foundation. And the first one is regulating the body. And regulating the body is a lot of times where we begin with new students because it's something that we can do on the surface and in a fairly short amount of time see some pretty drastic results. Now, there also is deeper levels of this as well, which I'll briefly touch on here in a minute. But an example of regulating the body would be, think about a time when maybe you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there for 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you're feeling lethargic and tired and just very depleted. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. And by understanding that we can regulate this with our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension and how we move through the day can be very beneficial. Now, this is kind of like a surface level understanding of regulating the body. To get a little bit deeper, we want to do things that's going to help us cultivate a certain level of muscular tone in the body to stay healthy and keep our metabolism up. We want to maintain a certain level of flexibility. We want to eat a healthy diet so we have good energy throughout the day, and we want to get an appropriate amount of sleep. All of these things are kind of part of that first regulation. Then we have in the second regulation, regulating the breath. This is an extremely deep topic and something that you will study for the rest of your life if you get into the meditative arts. And oftentimes they refer to Qigong as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies and ways that we can integrate the breath into our day and into our practices to help us get different physical, mental, and emotional states throughout the day. Now, because there's so many of these breathing strategies, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style meditations that are great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, with panic attacks, with improving your focus and creativity. And an example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if we want to emulate this style of energetic expression in our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward. Then we have the yang side of the breath. And this is more aggressive. And an example of this would be if you've ever had to push your car or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to use that exhale and maybe put tension in the breath or maybe even make it audible. These are characteristics of how we expand the energy in the body and bring out that strength or that warmth. Now, when we start understanding how to use the breath strategically, we can use these methods to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional states. And in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the Kan and Li. So we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start recognizing that you're getting excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring us back down. And when we see ourselves starting to feel a little depleted, we can use the yang side of the breath to help bring us back up. And so the breath is a very powerful tool. And now this is just kind of a basic understanding of it. There's obviously more complex ways that we can use the breath, but hopefully this gives you an idea of some of the things we can do when regulating the breath. Then the third regulation is regulating the mind. And regulating the mind is, again, a very complex idea and something that you will study for the rest of your life if you take on the meditative practice. And an example of this would be, one of the most common things I hear people say is they've tried meditation, but it just didn't work for them. They couldn't quiet their mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful in meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing else bothers you. And it couldn't be further from the truth. When we sit and we practice a meditation, We may get distracted 50 times during that session. And every time you get distracted, you recognize the distraction. You use your breath, your posture, your movement, if it's a movement practice, to help bring you back to focus. And now you just got 50 repetitions on how to be out of balance and coming back to center. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to where almost as if you're unshakable. It doesn't matter if somebody says something to throw you off your game or you have a bad day at work. It's really easy to come back to that center, balanced mental state and approach things with a little more even keel than from an emotional state. You know, there's this story I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a rainstorm, and everything's muddy everywhere. They come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and he picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles further down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we have to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize that we need to let go of that thing or whatever it is? And so understanding how to recognize these imbalances by developing a heightened awareness with our meditation practice, it makes it a lot easier to make these adjustments than after we're already 2 miles down the road where it's kind of difficult to let something go at that point. The fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could literally talk for hours about. But just a basic understanding would be, once I've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, now I have the tools available to lead the energy in the body inwards, to extend it outwards, to circulate it in the body to get different outcomes with different meditations that we're doing. And then the last regulation is regulating the spirit. And regulating the spirit is a very profound idea, and it's something that meditation masters will spend their entire life's journey working towards that stage of enlightenment. Now, once you understand these basic 5 regulations, you can easily see that by cultivating these ideas, it can affect everything you do in life and enrich everything you do.
But talk about how someone, if someone wanted to begin meditation, how can they choose the best meditation practice for them?
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
You know, as a teacher for so many years, one of the hardest things for me is getting people to follow through with the practice until they get to the point where they see the benefits and they realize this is something that is very valuable to them, and have that internal motivation to want to do it every day. In the beginning, oftentimes people think that, oh, it's a chore. I got to go do my meditation again today. And it's my job as a teacher to show you that it's not a chore. It's not something you have to do every day. It's something that you get to do. And you are so lucky to have this opportunity, because these things will transform your life and feed you so many benefits, that by doing this practice and just having a little bit of discipline and consistency, it will change your life for the better every day you do it. And so I have 3 things that I have found to be very helpful when somebody new is coming to the practice, that if they spend some time thinking about them, it'll very much help their success in their journey in a meditation path. And the first one is thinking about your why. Why are you being drawn to doing meditation? Do you want to stay healthy into your later years to watch your grandkids grow up? Do you want to understand how to deal with stress disorders, with anxiety, with panic attacks? Are you working through an illness? Or maybe you're an athlete and you want to learn how to improve your performance on the field. Whatever it is for you, find what that why is. And then don't just think of it as a surface level why. Think about, if you accomplish that and you reach that goal, think about all of the good things that are going to change in your life, and all of the benefits that you're going to get in everything you do by accomplishing that goal. Then I want you to flip the coin and think about all of the negative things that you're going to see and that are going to happen if you don't accomplish that goal. And this will help give you that motivation. So when your alarm clock goes off tomorrow morning and you're tempted to hit the snooze button, you don't even think about it. You get up and you're like, hey, it's time to do my practice. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, you have to understand and approach the practice with a clear vision that this is going to be work. You've got to put time into it. You have to be consistent. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to retire to a cave and meditate for the rest of your life. But if you could just be consistent with doing a 20-minute ritual every day and integrating some active practices into your life, and you keep that up for a year, this will be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself, and you'll do it for the rest of your life, because you'll see so many benefits from the practice that you'd be crazy to stop. Now, from this consistency, we develop so many good qualities, like being more disciplined and the level of integrity that we reach and the perseverance and all of these things that not only affect our practice, but they bleed over into everything else you do in life. And then the last thing that you want to consider as a new practitioner is you have to find a guide. Trying to self-teach yourself a practice like this, you could literally waste 20 years of your life and never get past the surface level. It's, I've seen this over and over running my academy now for 30 years. I'll have students come in here who have been self-taught. There's a million videos out there on YouTube, and I don't even know how many apps there are that show you this, that, and the other. And you get somebody who's had a disciplined practice for 15 years, but they're kind of just following the next shiny object as they go around and try to teach themselves. And they come into our establishment and they see somebody who's only been training for 6 or 12 months, who is extremely further along in their practice, and they get a little bit discouraged, and rightly so. They've invested all this time. Now, it doesn't take much to find a guide. Your life you're not around forever. Time is valuable. Having somebody help point you in the right direction can save you years of time and help you reach the goals you're trying to accomplish with a practice much faster. And so if you do that and you consider what your whys are and really spend some time and invest in that. Understand that this is going to be some work and that you got to stay consistent and find yourself a guide. You can really get a lot of value out of integrating meditation into your life.
Tell us about your books, and I know you say you'll give listeners a free copy, so just kind of tell listeners where they can get it, what they can expect when they read them, and how to get that free copy for those who might want it.
Sure. So my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, right now I'm giving away a free copy of that. If you go to my website, theyieldingwarrior.com/book, and you can order a free copy of that. You just pay for shipping and handling. Also on the website, theyieldingwarrior.com, we have a 2-week trial where you can check out our online program that teaches you how to start building and cultivating a meditation practice into your life. I also have links up through the website if you're interested in studying our teacher training program and learning how to hand these arts down and share them with other people. So that's how you can get in touch with me.
Okay, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that the listeners need to be aware of.
Well, right now I'm working on my next book. It's called The Yielding Athlete, focusing on mental training skills and how to use the meditative arts to improve your athletic and physical performance. I'm always working on fine-tuning my membership portal for those of my students that are in the online program, as well as my teacher training program. And right now, my main focus is building up my teacher training program, so I have a big community of people out there helping me spread the word.
Okay, so throw out your contact information once more, and we'll close us out with this question. What makes the Yielding Warrior program better than other programs out there, you feel?
I think what makes it different is that I teach people the science behind these different meditative practices so they can basically learn and understand how to write their own prescription to get the different outcomes that they want to do. Because meditation is not meant to be one exercise that's a blanket practice for everybody. There's many different methods and practices, and having an understanding of how to use all of these different breathing strategies or movement practices or energetic circulations in the body without just blindly swinging the bat in the dark, it gives you a sense of direction in how to follow the right path that works for you. And I think that's one of the things that really makes us stand out and be different than a lot of programs out there.
Okay, and give out that website one more time to get that free copy of that book.
It's theyieldingwarrior.com. And if you would like the free book, just add a /book there, and that's how you can reach us.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So if you or somebody you know wants to get into the meditative and martial arts practices, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite podcast app, leave us a review, check out the show, share it. If you have any guests or suggestions, Curtis Jackson, 1978 at att.net. Again, that's Curtis Jackson, 1978 at att.net. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Jeff, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.